instantly felt some type of way seeing this title / headline is what I look at it as. I look at this title as like a headline. It reads, New York just banned homeless people from the subway. Now, mind you, keep in mind, I do know, I heard about the situations. I've also covered the situations. Maybe not the most recent one when the person got burned alive or something like that in the subway and lost their life. I'm fully aware of them having to bring the police to the subway station and everything that's going on. That's not the part that frustrates me because I get that side of it. We all do. We're all human. We get that side of it. I think it's the side for me that gets me a little bit frustrated is when you have an issue and you have a problem, it's like, are we taking care of our own? So if we ban them, what did we do with them? How did we help them? Is there programs? Are they receiving the same thing that the illegals that are coming through are receiving? That's my question, and then that would be my issue. So we got something to discuss, y'all. Let's see what's going on in New York City.
Beneath the glimmering sidewalks of Herald Square, homeless outreach workers are pleading with a man with bare feet. Others approach another man who refuses to move.
This breaks my heart right here.
Mayor Adams is determined to change.
So every winter when temperatures drop, the subway sadly turns into a place of refuge for New York City's homeless. And while the city has plans to relocate unhoused individuals out of America's largest public transit network, activists say the homeless have a right to use the subway how they see fit since it's open to the public. But as it turns out, the mayor has plans to change that.
We are getting a better idea of the progress being made under the Adams administration's controversial overnight homeless outreach program.
This is a picture-perfect example of why we should not be saying he has a right to be out there. He doesn't know he needs help.
On a crowded subway station, you've got half the subway cars taken up with people who are sleeping. They're not committing a crime per se here, but this is a symptom of a larger problem.
Sad-looking storefronts here underground.
Now, that is, you'd be crazy if you sit here and look at that and don't see that that's a problem. That's definitely a safety concern for people that are riding the subway nervous. You can look at one of the ladies' faces. She was nervous, as she should be. We've all seen the violence that have occurred. So if I'm going on there, especially if you have children, taking children on that subway, you're nervous. You're nervous. There's no possible way. So don't get me wrong. I get that.
Where you could once grab a slice or a newspaper or a coffee. Of 195 retail spaces in the subway system, only 52 of them are open for business, a vacancy rate of nearly 75%.
I have two young boys. They're 9 and 13. I don't want my boys walking around that. I don't feel they're safe when we see that.
It's about understanding our responsibility to help people who are in desperate need but just can't recognize it themselves. And there's nothing respectful about leaving somebody to rot.
Some are starting to say the subway is turning into an underground wasteland. And we're going to investigate this wasteland to see how bad it really is. But what nobody wants to admit is that you could drastically decrease the number of people living down here if you do more to help them live somewhere else. But our subway is actually a mess of New York City's own making, with crime and lawlessness so out of control down here. There is still a force of National Guard troops deployed throughout the system, monitoring it for dangerous activity, along with thousands of extra police. And city leaders know that the second they pull out, the criminals are just going to come right back. But you know something? Lawlessness doesn't stop at physical crimes like robbery and assault, which still take place down here because troops aren't riding the trains. The lawlessness down here also includes fare evasion, which costs the city roughly $700 million a year in financial losses. And shockingly, when the MTA arrests fare beaters, they tend to have active warrants. On top of that, a high-profile court case involving Jordan Neely, a homeless street performer with 42 prior arrests has city officials admitting more people could unknowingly be putting themselves and others in harm's way. And that brings us to the real reason why the city is now taking drastic steps to move people who are homeless and living in the subway out of it. It puts people with mental health issues at risk. And it's not fair for a city that spends as much money as New York does every year not to do more to help people who think this is the only place they have to stay. And with the city set to activate its controversial congestion pricing scheme, which will tax drivers who refuse to use the subway, the powers that be have decided that if they're going to punish everyone who doesn't use our dangerous public transit networks, they better not do it while also punishing the homeless by neglecting them.
Imagine that. Imagine that. I don't want to get on there because of the stories, the crimes that have been committed, everything that you've seen come across the news. I don't want to subject myself to the possibility. And now I'm going to get in trouble and be fined or taxed for that? You got to be kidding me, man. That's why I feel like sometimes, man, this system is it's a joke to me sometimes, bro. Because I'm sitting here saying like, man, I'm trying to avoid that. But here y'all go, y'all created these bike lanes and now the traffic is just so congested there that now so I have to take the subway to be able to get to point A to point B on time. It's just like, bro, like I didn't cause this problem. I didn't. So I can only imagine how the people feel.
But as you're about to see, the city's efforts to help people move out of this place aren't exactly going as planned. So here we are at the 34th Street Herald Square subway terminal, which is quite large, quite warm, and sadly has become a visual display of the humanitarian crisis taking place beneath the streets of New York City. In fact, this particular area where we're standing right now with this green backdrop here, this used to be the entrance to a mall which has become abandoned, and it's a place where people have been sleeping in the evenings. At least that was what was going on down here until the city decided to take steps to stop that from happening. Steps which many say are extremely controversial. At the same time, look at this place. It's loud, it's bright, there's dripping water, there's trash all over the place. This is not where somebody should be trying to live on a full-time basis, that's for sure. And city officials are defending their new plans as being necessary to help those who may not be able to help themselves.
Governor Kathy Hochul said today that Jordan Neely should have been removed from the subway. She is promising a new series of policies to address the state's mental health crisis. That will come as welcome news to those in need and to the boots on the ground, the police officers and social.
So here you have a group of police and outreach workers who invited the press to come with them to this very same subway terminal while they went about contacting, that's what they call it when they interact with people who might appear to be unhoused. And the New York Post, who tagged along, says that 96 individuals were found to be sleeping in this one terminal. And there's an extremely high likelihood that if this investigation had taken place in more places than just this, that the sad state of affairs down here would be even more obvious. Furthermore, this tag-along only included a stroll through this terminal. They didn't ride the trains, where there are many people who sadly are calling that their temporary home. And although the total number of homeless living in the subway is unknown, this article estimates it could be as high as 4,100 people. And there could be more people living down here in the subway than in some small towns in America, which is shocking. However, what's even more shocking is that the city's efforts to help move people from here to an actual place which has been set aside for them to stay haven't exactly been working.
Each night, nurses and social workers are teaming up with New York City police officers.
How is that? And we were literally busing the illegals that were coming through the border to different areas that they had set up. I saw the tents with my own eyes. I saw the ones that were set up out in locations that they had even taken over parks and school, little abandoned, like they created these places when it became a public problem. Maybe this hasn't gone as public as it should. So it forces their hand to say, okay, maybe we need to take a site and create and put up tents and different things, or create a building or take an old abandoned building or something and use for the people. This is what frustrates people about taking care of your own.
Part of the mayor's latest initiative to offer shelter and services to the homeless and to involuntarily commit those with severe mental illness who refuse treatment.
So this is the part where things get controversial. Every night you've got these outreach teams that scour the subway looking for folks who might be down here and might not have anywhere else to go. And their goal is to help them go somewhere better than this. And the way this is done is by approaching an individual who might be sleeping or lounging about the platform and asking them if they need assistance, which activists say constitutes harassment, while ignoring the inhumanity of letting people think this dangerous environment is the only place they've got to stay. However, the New York Post says of the 96 people who were contacted and asked if they needed assistance, only 16 agreed to accept. Yet the city does have the authority to involuntarily commit people who could be a danger to themselves and others, something the governor says could have saved Jordan Neely, who was part of an altercation in the subway which made national headlines. And sadly, the governor makes a good point. If you've got people living in the subway who are not in the right frame of mind to take care of themselves and nothing is done, those people are at risk.
More than 5,000 have been approached in the past 3 months, and roughly 1/3 have accepted care, including treatment. The critics say that he should have a right to be in a public subway system on a public street, and he shouldn't be harassed by the city or by the police.
And the critics are so far removed from what everyday New Yorkers want.
Just this morning.
So this report says 5,000 people have been approached by these outreach teams with better results than were witnessed in this very same terminal. And Mayor Adams has had some incredibly harsh words for progressive critics who say people should be allowed to live in the subway full time with no intervention because it's a public place. He says not only is doing something like that inhumane, it is the opposite of what New Yorkers, average New Yorkers, are actually in favor of. Because average New Yorkers know how much money they are paying in taxes. And when they get on the subway and they want to ride it and they're either unable to or there's no room to get a seat because someone happens to be living there, they say to themselves, where is this money going if it's not being used to take care of people who have nothing? At the same time, 2025 is a local election year here in the city, which some say has a lot to do with why new steps are being taken to change how things have been getting done around here. Because every single time people see a person with nowhere else to go, sleeping in the subway or on a bus, it looks to them like there is a lack of leadership on this issue. At the same time, the mayor and the police commissioner say that they're fighting an uphill battle. City laws only allow them to do so much to help people who might be in a vulnerable, bad situation, and they want state laws to be passed to enable them to do more. And the specific thing they're looking at doing is codifying what is called involuntary removal.
This is a guy, he's got a Skittles box on his head.
This is a picture-perfect example of why we should not be saying he has a right to be out there. He doesn't know he needs help. We have to give him that.
Now, progressive policies...
Yeah, the thing is, if you have to question, then that person, you know what I mean? I said the moment that the violence started, and for the people who are saying they have a right to live there, go look up all of the incidences that have happened in the subway, right? Because I'm not saying that. My thing is, get them somewhere to stay. If you have programs, let's get them in there. If they don't want to go voluntarily, then at that point, what do? You can't just leave them there because, bro, there have been so many incidences where people have lost their lives. It's ridiculous on the subway. Talk to the New Yorkers. They'll tell you, bro, look at the videos. They'll tell you how dangerous it is. One lady, I know the video perfectly that you can go look at, where the guy tried to take the lady, tried to abduct the lady. And some people had to come to her rescue. He was dragging her out of there. Bro, that's the type of violence. Even the conductor, something happened and an incident happened. So if you're saying, oh, it's not right, they need to have somewhere to stay, we get that. Right? And they have programs and they're offering that. But when they refuse, then what are you supposed to do? Leave them in there to where there's a point to something can happen? My only issue would be if there wasn't programs or places for them to go, then I would have a problem with you saying they had to go somewhere and us not taking care of our own. Because we have to take care of our own, especially when you know some of them be veterans, bro. And that's the crazy part about it.
Say that it would be wrong to intervene in a man's life when he is spiraling out of control, because doing so would take away his right to self-determination and the pursuit of happiness as he sees fit. And for a long time, various leaders of New York have treated the subway as just another public space and have made people feel bad about their desire to see people who are there and are obviously in distress helped in some way. Something that would also make America's largest public transit network safer and more usable for those who pay to use it. On top of that, a public transit network is not designed as a living quarters for anybody. And at present, state lawmakers are considering the Supportive Interventions Act, which would say that a person in need of medical or psychiatric care can be forcibly removed from the streets. But the only terrifying thing about this is it would be the government who determines who needs a psychiatric evaluation, and that's not going to sit right with everybody. And in the future, what if an act like that is abused? However, proponents of these ideas say that current laws and policies, which do allow for involuntary commitment, don't give the police the tools they need to help those who are now in distress, and who also may not have the agency to understand the effect their choices have on their very lives. However, as you're about to see, there's another cost associated with allowing the subway to be run in this manner, and if the city doesn't do something about it soon, things down here might get even worse. So behind me, we've got a small business. There's a vending machine around the corner here, a couple of ATMs. There are signs of life down here that kind of bring the subway back almost 20 years ago, when you used to have all kinds of stores and shops in this environment. A lot of those, however, have not been able to make it. And really, it should be no surprise why a business might find it tough to operate in a high crime environment. That is a visual humanitarian disaster that the city is not tending to.
Sad-looking storefronts here underground, where you could once grab a slice or a newspaper or a coffee. Of 195 retail spaces in the subway system, only 52 of them are open for business. A vacancy rate of...
We was talking about that, bro. How it was going to eventually happen over here like it was happening on the West Coast. We said it. We said it when we saw all of those storefronts, those malls and all those shopping centers and different things, and them passing the laws that people weren't convicted for those type of crimes, for stealing and stuff like that, and how it ruined certain areas over there on the West Coast. I said, bro, it's not going to be long before it happens over here, fam. And look at it. Look at the vacancy rate, 75%. 75%. Like, this isn't what we know. This isn't the world we know. Growing up, the place to go was the mall. Those shopping stores and everything like that. You remember your parents taking you there or dropping you off there. You having a good time. That's no more, bro. That's no more. People are so nervous to go to the mall. Kid you not. A store here in a mall here in Atlanta, Cumberland. They just had one of those situations with a shooter or something like that here recently. And when they showed it on the news, I was like, wow, that's one of the stores I go shopping or I go in when I go in the mall, and I visit there frequently. And I said to myself, bro, I gotta stop going to the mall and start shopping online more now. Like, this is where we are now, because you can't go to a public place like that anymore and feel safe. It's just not possible anymore, bro. It's not.
Nearly 75%.
So apparently you've got hundreds of empty kiosks like the one behind me, which makes sense. This is not a great environment to do anything. It's not even a great environment to get on the train, let alone spend money. At least they've gotten around to reopening some of the bathrooms that have been closed for the last 4 years. That's a good start. And with the high levels of crime and the constant militarization of this environment, it's hard to think of who wants to have lunch in a place.
I wouldn't dare. Can you imagine? The subway already looks like a dark area, right? And then you see people laying and sleeping around, right? Could you see yourself going into a subway bathroom and the door closing behind you? You go in the stall and now you're at one of your most vulnerable states and you're using the bathroom and then that door opens? It's no way. It's no way I could see. I'd hold it until I don't care how bad I had to go. And if it got to the point where I needed to choose going in there or going on myself, guess what I'm gonna choose? Yeah, yeah. I would do it, bro. I wouldn't risk my life going in that bathroom. No way.
Place like this or buy something expensive. But it's not just this incredibly dilapidated station which is having these types of retail problems. No, in fact, even one of the nicest subway terminals in the entire system, which is located down on Fulton Street, has a similar problem. That facility cost over $1 billion to build. It's designed as both a mall and a transit hub, yet the mall portion is entirely empty. All of the stores are closed, and the mall giant Westfield that was leasing it from the city is in the process of canceling and breaking their lease because they say the city hasn't maintained a crime-free, safe environment to try and lease out stores. And that makes sense. Anybody who spends more than 5 minutes down here understands how quickly they need to get out of here and move on with their day. And certainly, who's going to pull out their wallet or purse to buy something expensive if they think something bad might happen to them while they're doing that? But to make matters worse, even the police commissioner has mentioned that she has safety issues with this place as well and doesn't think it's safe enough for her family.
I have 2 young boys. They're 9 and 13. I don't want my boys walking around that. I don't feel they're safe when we see that. So that's what this program is designed to do.
Brian Stent is the deputy.
Okay, if this subway is not safe enough for the police commissioner, I'm not sure who it's safe enough for. Yet it's welcome news to many that the city finally seems to be doing something down here about this environment to make it safer for everybody, including those who are in need. And you know, I don't think any of us want to hear at this point that they don't have the money to go about doing this because they're wasting millions on all kinds of bizarre things, like a study to examine the psychology of those who don't want to pay to use this place. And speaking of losing money, this article says that the subway itself is losing $800 million a year, which is higher than prior estimates, to people who evade the fare. Oddly, that number is just $200 million less than the $1 billion their congestion pricing scheme, which is going to tax cars, needs to generate by law to even be in place in the first place. And what this essentially means is that if you have a car, you will now be subsidizing crime and lawlessness down here in the subway itself. What a beautiful system.
5,600 people made contact, 1,700 were placed. Is the discrepancy there are people who didn't want help, or are there not spaces for them?
No, there are spaces for them, in fact. And, you know, people do have a right to say no. The mayor says they don't have a right to be sleeping in the subway system. So what they do is they just move on. They get out.
So apparently the city does have facilities that are set up for folks who might be down here and think that this is the only place they can stay. But apparently those facilities remain empty because a lot of the people down here don't want to use them, which brings us back to the start of this video where folks like the mayor are saying that interventions need to be allowed because people aren't taking the helping hand that is being offered to them. And of course, this once again raises debate over what's humane and what's not humane. Think
about that, man. Anytime you try to have an intervention with somebody, you're usually met with resistance in the beginning, right? Some people don't know they need help. Some people don't know they're at bottom, but to them, they haven't hit bottom or rock bottom yet. You know what I mean? They think they have it under control. They're comfortable dealing with the day-to-day as they see fit or going through it, however they've been going through it. They don't know that. No. Like, I think I saw one of the people that they put the camera on there who looked like he had on a clean, fresh pair of Jordans. Now, I don't know if that person was homeless or not because he didn't dub it that, but he kept showing the camera on him like he was throughout the video. And I'm looking at his shoes like, yo, his shoes better than mine. We all know how much Jordans cost. But still in all, like, some people will refuse help. They don't want to go. They don't want to leave the area they feel like and stuff like that. So at that point in time, what do you do? What do you do? Because you just can't leave them there for the safety of the people. Once you have one incident, then that's one incident too many. So then you, as the mayor or whoever, you have to sit there with yourself and say, okay, I've had one. Unfortunately for them, they've had several. At some point, you can't leave the option up to them. You pass some type of law or ordinance and say, no one should be living down there or sleeping down there. If you are homeless, we have a space for you to go. You can come here. If we catch you there, then we have to do something about it. Simple. Like, I don't understand. If you disagree with me, offer up a better solution. That way I can look at that and say, okay, I agree with that. We can go with that. But offer up something instead of just saying they should have a right to sleep there. Then you obviously don't care for the people that are riding on that subway with them that have been victims or have seen somebody be a victim of violence or crime.
People who have nowhere else to go or can't get to one of these welfare centers really be treated in a manner that forces them to move along? Or is it possible that the city's care facilities are so unsafe and so dangerous that many folks are better off not using them? Because there have definitely been widespread reports that some of these care facilities are not exactly caring and the workers are rather rough on the guests, which makes sense why people might not want to go there either. And the timing of this new effort to help the homeless no longer live in the subway cannot be a coincidence. This humanitarian disaster has been taking place beneath our streets for a long time, and this is the first time anything's being done to help the less fortunate move to a place that might be better suited to them. What do you think about that? Are the city's plans to help the homeless in the subway itself a coincidence? Is this something that they were planning on doing all along? And are they good plans? Is it a good thing to help someone move out of the subway if they truly think this is the only place that there is for them? Let me know what you think about that. Thank you so much.
Now, if the programs are a problem, then they should have somebody auditing these programs. Like, there's no way that people should be suffering going to these programs, bro, or these people that are at the head of these programs should not be. Like, no, don't give them funding. Give it to somebody else who's really going to care for the people, who's really going to look out for the people, man, and understanding the people that they are dealing with at the same time. Like, you really got to have patience. You really got to have understanding. You really got to know what you're doing and who you're dealing with that are coming to these programs and facilities. If that's who you are and you signed up for this, then that's what you have to be. But something has to be done, bro. I look forward to seeing what y'all got to say. I'll climb down off my soapbox. But, yeah, I don't want to hear that we're not taking care of our own. And I don't want to hear they're being mistreated, but also the safety of the ones who are riding the subway is also the utmost concern. Y'all let me know.